Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Ashley Studholm. I'm the Executive Director with the Prince William Conservation Alliance. And normally I would share my screen and instruct you all to go to pwconserve.gov, and we've got, goodness, .org to check us out and see what we're up to. But our website has been down all day, so we're in the process of troubleshooting that. But hopefully in the future, you'll just be able to go to pwconserve.org to stay up to date with what we're up to and all of our programs and events that we plan to connect people to nature or to let people know about important decisions that are happening throughout the county. And that's what tonight is all about. We're here to discuss a little bit about the Hoadly Square project and the Maple Valley Grove that went to the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago. And both of these projects were recommended by the Planning Commission for denial, and that was pretty significant, and we didn't necessarily anticipate that. And so that is a huge testament, I think, to the effort of all of the residents that brought concerns to the Planning Commission and voiced that the amount of development that was being planned for this area was incongruent for the area, but also steered us away from our commitment to protecting the Occoquan Reservoir and the watershed. And so we'll get into that a little bit more tonight. Now, during that presentation, we heard a couple of things from the applicant. So we wanted to have kind of a panel discussion to share some information about, the importance of this area and to provide you all with information in preparation for the board meeting, which will be next Tuesday, December 16th. And we just hope that, providing this additional information will help you all prepare for your comments, because we really did see a strong effort during the Planning Commission, and we're hoping to see the same during the board meeting. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Elizabeth Ward from Green Risks, and she is going to help us understand that connection of a healthy, oh, I'm sorry, before I jump in, I just wanted to mention that this event is co-hosted between the Prince William Conservation Alliance and MidCo. And we've been working together a lot on these two projects. And it's been great to work with Martin and all the folks from MidCo. And so in terms of the overview of the program, we'll be doing the panel discussion first, and then we'll do the Q&A at the end. And so, Martin, did I leave anything out? You're muted.
No, you did a great job, and I appreciate Conservation Alliance putting this meeting together and having this important discussion, because I know it's not often we get expert advice and input from people like Julie Flanagan, who was on the staff, county staff as our one and only arborist for a number of years. And she was so good that at one point they actually would not let her talk at the board meetings because she did such a great job. So we're really glad to have Julie here, and Elizabeth Ward. I don't think needs any introduction. I think most people know her, but she's very knowledgeable about watersheds and groundwater and aquifers and that kind of thing. So these are two really important people to have at this meeting to talk about ORPA, the importance of it, what we have to be careful with development and all those things. So thanks to everybody.
Great. And Doreen, I saw that you had your hand raised. If you could just either hold off until the end or put it in the chat, that would be great because we want to just go ahead and get started. And this is recorded.
Meeting.
So
this is about the board meeting. Is that at 7:00 p.m.?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so without further ado, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us, and take it away so we can learn a little bit more about water, ORPA, and groundwater specifically.
Okay, so here's the ORPA. To protect the Occoquan Reservoir that provides drinking water to the eastern portion of Prince William County, the county has created an overlay district in the lower Occoquan watershed, the ORPA. Now, developers are attempting to exempt the largest undeveloped parcels from the protections. The whole point of the ORPA is to prevent more intense development and protect the drinking water supply for well owners and for eastern Prince William County. So here we have the Occoquan watershed. Today, the Occoquan watershed is often described as the most urbanized watershed in the nation. Certainly, there are more urbanized areas in the United States, but they no longer have functioning watersheds. We need to effectively protect ours as our source of drinking water. Groundwater serves as the savings account for rivers and streams. It is recharged by precipitation and is impacted by increase or decrease in precipitation patterns and changing land use. Protecting the recharge of groundwater within the Occoquan watershed serves to protect all the water resources in the watershed. So this is basically what they want to do with Maple Grove. Cut down all the trees and build lots of stuff with pavement. Land use changes that increase impervious cover from roads, pavements, and buildings does two things. It reduces the open area for rain and snow to seep into the ground and percolate into the groundwater, and the impervious surfaces cause stormwater velocity to increase, preventing water from having enough time to soak into the earth, increasing storm flooding and preventing recharge of groundwater from occurring. The water hits the ground and just picks up velocity. Slowly, this can reduce water supply over time. As groundwater levels fall, perennial streams that feed our rivers become ephemeral, only flowing after rainstorms. The groundwater becomes disconnected from the surface water. Scientists have found that when 5 to 10% of a watershed is developed, it begins to die, but can still be restored for a while. So this is not in the ORPA. This is another creek, but it used to be perennial. And this is just a picture last summer. Actually, a couple of summers ago, it looked the same last summer. It stopped flowing. It always flowed. The groundwater, what has happened is the groundwater level fell low enough where it's no longer feeding the stream between rainstorms. So if urban land use exceeds the tipping point, water quality does not respond to restoration measures. Once you destroy a watershed, we do not know how to restore it. According to the Northern Virginia Regional Commission in 2015, impervious surfaces in this lower Occoquan area were already at 11%. All right. So. No. Let's switch that. In a functioning watershed, the available supply of fresh water is continually renewed by the hydraulic cycle. And in the case of the Occoquan Reservoir, the actions of mankind, we add the wastewater back into the streams. The need for water is constant and grows with population, wealth, and business activity. There's also seasonality. We use more water in summer. There has been a 6-fold increase in the population from when the Occoquan Reservoir Management Plan was enacted almost half a century ago. At the time, The recommended goals were to provide the highest treatment technically achievable for the discharged reclaimed water, the wastewater, to the Occoquan watershed, and limit the basin population to 100,000. We sort of blew past that a long time ago. The quantity and quality of groundwater in Prince William varies across the county, depending on the geologic and hydrogeologic groups you're in. Generally speaking, groundwater in the county is recharged in elevated areas, as you see in the little diagram here, and discharges to the streams and estuaries. However, the path and duration of groundwater flow are different between consolidated rocks, unconsolidated material, and various land covers. The permeability of forests is incredible, and Julie will cover that far more fully than I will. Protecting the Occoquan Reservoir, which supplies water to more than 800,000 residents, requires protecting all the water resources in the region. We are one water system. All water in the watershed is connected. Precipitation moves into the water table, down to the groundwater, or into the rivers and streams. Disrupting the balance at any portion of this can have dire consequences. The water in the Occoquan watershed, in the Occoquan Reservoir, actually comes from the Bull Run watershed, 25%, the Occoquan River watershed, 48%, groundwater and other watershed, 20%, and finally the reclaimed water from Uosa, 6%. Destroy the watershed, and what you have is whatever stormwater you can catch, and Uosa's reclaimed water. The area of the ORPA is beyond the Culpeper Basin there, but still in the Piedmont geologic zone. This area of ORPA is primarily hydrogeologic group D, composed of igneous rocks formations, with a hydrogeologic group E that transitions into the coastal plain at the bounds of the ORPA. The hydrogeologic group D consists of 3 igneous plutons in the eastern part of the county. We won't go into them. I'm sure you don't really care what the name of these igneous rocks are. But the group D tends to have moderate water-bearing potential, and groundwater storage is primarily in the overburden, which is the soils above the bedrock, so that, it's a mud aquifer. Wells in this area are most susceptible to drought and tend to be slightly acidic. Groundwater wells in this area have yields that range from 1.2 to 100 gallons a minute, which has resulted in the development of homes with wells in the area due to the thickness of the water storing overburden. All right, here we go. The only proxy well for hydrogeologic group D is actually in Prince William Forest Park. It is the most pristine area in the county. And if you look at it, you can see it's got a descending curve going on. This is not good. But without additional data points, it's impossible to know if the sustainability of the groundwater has been permanently impacted or it's just a drought response. My suspicion is it's both. The adjacent hydrogeologic group B, also in the Piedmont, consists of metamorphic rocks that have really poor water-bearing potential. Some of the poorest yields in the county from wells were in that area. Homes and businesses in this area have long depended on the public water supply from the Occoquan Reservoir. All right. So this is actually my backyard, but hey, I used it. The region's water supply is under threat. Pave over the subwatersheds and you eliminate groundwater recharge and impact the stream flow. Our woodlands are fast giving way to impervious surfaces, impacting the water table and ecosystem, exacerbating drought and increasing salinity. As Dr. Stanley Grant, director of the Occoquan Watershed Monitoring Laboratory, points out, the emerging water quality issues in the county are a result of the built environment. As we continue to develop the Occoquan watershed, we endanger the sustainability of the water supply for eastern Prince William County and the rest of the 800,000 people in Northern Virginia who are drinking water from the Griffith plant. When population density increases, the impervious surfaces in a watershed increase. However, the increase is not linear. Once the population density reaches 100 people per square mile, the rate of increase in impervious surface is a hockey stick, goes right up. This is what will finally turn the most urbanized watershed in the United States into a memory. But before that happens, we will dramatically increase the cost of our water because we have a building problem. The salinity in the reservoir has been rising over time and is reaching a critical stage. The rising salt in the reservoir is primarily from watershed runoff. What got laid into the land by salting roads. Every drop of salt that's been put on the roads over the years just washes into the watershed. Salt also comes from the reclaimed water from Uosa during dry periods. The sodium concentration in the wastewater from Uosa will rise with the increase in blowdown from data centers, cooling, and increased population. Human waste is very salty. We eat salty diets. Increasing paved areas increases the salt runoff into the watershed, and the salt runoff is the largest source of salt into the Occoquan. The only way to remove salt from the drinking water supply is to invest billions of dollars from your water rates in building and installing desalination equipment in the region's water treatment plants, which are not currently capable of removing salt from the source water. By building suburban sprawl on the open woodland, on what was once open woodland, we assure that we will have increasing costs for our water infrastructure and reduced water availability for all. Okay. And that's it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And from that, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the limitations, because what we heard quite a bit during the Planning Commission was, you know, how the stormwater for Hoadly Square goes above and beyond. But there is wisdom in the design of ORPA, and that it really focuses on limiting the density. And so to help us understand a little bit more, you know, the importance of how ORPA is designed and how it functions from a watershed perspective, we have Julie Flanagan, who was the county arborist for years. She was the first county arborist in Prince William County. And Martin already explained that she was so good at explaining the importance of trees and the role that they played in protecting our water quality that she was not allowed to speak during board meetings. But now the muzzle is off. She has retired, and we're delighted to have her with us tonight to share her expertise with us. So Julie, thank you so much for being here, and please take it away.
So a similar graphic to what Elizabeth showed, the turquoise is the complete Occoquan Reservoir watershed. So any rainfall that comes down within that aqua colored area eventually flows into the Occoquan Reservoir. And the red area is the ORPA. And so a little bit I work a lot in my work with both Fairfax and Prince William County on rezoning cases, and land development was basically my career. So a little bit of explanation, just in case you're not familiar with the long range land use. It's what we have right now. The ORPA is a land use designation that it's part of the comprehensive plan, and it's intended to guide. It's not a law. It's intended to guide development within that area. And so it has relatively short, but information in it about the kind of development that should take place within the ORPA. And just so you have an idea where the ORPA sits within this overall watershed, that's the outlined red area there. Okay, it's the entire ORPA, the red area, is roughly 13,228 acres. It's depending upon what document that number shifts a little bit depending on what document you're looking at, but that's a good picture of how big it is. It's about 3.9% of the total Occoquan Reservoir watershed. And let's see. It land use district within the plan. And so when a develop land within the ORPA, what he's supposed to be doing, theoretically, is that he looks at the comp plan and sees what it says should be going into that area. And he's supposed to plan his development based upon what the long-range land use is for that area. And that's obviously not happening with Hoadly Square. They want to do much more intense development in the ORPA than is allowed by or is recommended by the comprehensive plan. So here's just one or two policies that are in the comp plan that mention the ORPA now, or that mention the Occoquan watershed. Now this one is interesting because it's not even in the ORPA. This is the government complex, which is just right about where my cursor is. It sits right about here. So it sits outside the ORPA, but the policy for the government complex, because it does drain to the Occoquan Reservoir, is that we're recognizing the fundamental role in preserving existing woodland cover in the activity center plan area, recognizing its fundamental role in maintaining the health of the Occoquan watershed and the overall appearance of the area. So this is basically saying extensive woodland cover is vital to maintaining the health of the Occoquan watershed. And that's for an area that's not even in ORPA. And then there's the ORPA itself, which is a special countywide classification. And here's the definition of that. And it limits residential development at a recommendation of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Now remember, that's a recommendation. That's not a requirement. And it talks about various severe slopes and various things that may be more sensitive within the ORPA. So this is similar to what Elizabeth showed you. The red outline here is the ORPA. And what I want you to notice here mostly, this is the government center right down here that we just read that one policy pertaining to it. But what is interesting to note, and it's a little bit difficult to see from this, I think my next slide will show it a little bit better, is just how the brown that you see in through here, and then you see these patches of brown elsewhere here. Sometimes you'll see them as patches of green. That's forest cover. These lighter green areas, those are open fields. These gray areas, that's heavy development, very, very dense development. And then in the next image, this is City of Manassas. It looks kind of brown, but that's not forest cover. We'll see in another aerial just how much gray there is there, and gray would indicate impervious area. But you can see that there's, as you go down toward Quantico Marine Corps Base and come up, this is the Occoquan River, this blue squiggly line, and this is where it joins Bull Run, which runs on the boundary of Prince William County. They combine and then form the reservoir, and then the dam for the reservoir is right about there. So you can see from the brown here that this swath of the county is very forested, and you see just the edge of Prince William County, Fairfax County on the other side of Bull Run, and that is also very forested. I think we'll be able to see this a little bit better here. I'm going to go back to the other one. So here, similar, there's the Occoquan River again. The dam for the Occoquan is somewhere down in here, right about there. This is Bull Run above that. And again, you can see all this development in through here, heavy development down in through here, heavy development in the Manassas area. Well, those are probably data centers. Heavy development over here, and then you see the lighter areas of the rural area. But you can then see the green that's all through this area. And that's what the ORPA is intending with where all this green is within the ORPA. That's what's intended to be protected by the overlay, the ORPA designation. Now, this is a document that shows forested areas, meaning truly forested areas that have a leaf litter that are not trees in lawn or trees in a parking lot or something like that. The darker green is the forested areas. That's this darker green that you see scattered throughout. And then I really wish I could move this out of the way. Oh, thank you. Figured it out finally. Okay, then the lighter greenish areas, like say right here, and in here, those are other tree cover, meaning that they are trees in lawn, trees in parking lots, things along those lines. The pinkish area are turf areas, and then the grayish areas, which don't really show up very strongly on here. If we were to zoom in more, they probably would show up better. But that's the impervious area. And impervious is simply saying that when a drop of water hits that surface, it doesn't absorb at all. It just simply runs off. So why then, let's see. Okay. Why then are trees so valuable? Not just trees, but why are forests so valuable to water quality? And I want to talk about that from a couple different perspectives, starting with the roots. So this is just a wonderful photo from someplace up in Vermont of how trees, you get a nice view of their roots here. But those are really a very small portion of a tree's root system. If you want to understand where a tree's roots are, then we wanted to understand that. And so as an arborist and a group of arborists around the Northern Virginia area and even into Maryland, DC, we used to hold what we called root appreciation days, and we'd all get together and we'd select some trees and we'd go to, like we'd find a tree like this, we'd find a root flare that was coming off the trunk, and we would just follow it and see where it led. We'd excavate that out. Oh, there we go. Excavate that out. And for the purpose of educating ourselves, where are these roots? So this was a tree on the grounds of, this one on the right-hand side was a tree on the grounds of the government center. It's down near where the ball fields are. And we excavated out a root and kept going and going and going. And then we painted it. They're not naturally pink, believe it or not. So what we did is we put a non-harming dust kind of like paint on it to show where the roots were that we were excavating. And this is very consistent with what we would find in trees in forested situations, as well as trees that have enough soil, even in a suburban system, where they can move length without being interrupted by a road or a wall or a foundation of a house or something like that. And what is really happening in terms of the spread of a root system is that if you were to take the height of the tree, let's say this tree is about 60 feet tall, the actual horizontal spread of the root system would be equal to the height of that tree laid down and looked at as a radius. So at a minimum, these trees' root systems are going, and this is again true in a forest. It's a picture of a developed setting, but you'd see the same thing in a forest, that those trees' roots, if they're not encumbered, they will horizontally spread at least the height of the tree. Now, most trees in our forests are at least 70 feet tall in a mature forest, sometimes 100, sometimes as much as 150 feet tall. So then you can imagine, well, you've got all these trees that are much closer to each other than 70 feet. And so you've got a network, and then you've got understory trees, you've got shrubs. All these root systems are forming a network within the top 3 feet of soil. And those roots, the structural roots, the roots that are taking up, that are holding that tree in place, are the structural roots. The roots that are absorbing the nutrients, and when they're in excess, we think of those as pollutants, but they're absorbing the nutrients that are in the soil. Those are the root hairs. They're very fine, literally as big as a hair on your head or smaller. And those are all going to be, all the root hairs are going to be in the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. That's where they live. And then the structural roots, these bigger roots, are going to be anywhere from the surface of the soil down to about 3 feet. And the reason that's so important, and I'm belaboring this, is because when we have water infiltration, there's a lot happening within that root zone of the trees. And we'll get into that just a little bit here. When you have an impervious surface, look at this image down here. So this is a parking lot, a gutter, curb, and a tree that was planted in an island in a very developed setting. This is again at the government center. When a root goes, it can't get into impervious area. So it has to redirect, or just simply, it can't stop. So it redirects. So you see the root coming, hitting the edge of the concrete curb, and then it has to, and then if you were to be on site, you'd see that it traveled right along the edge of the curb and then went around the curb and was accessing the soil over here. Underneath that pavement, it's also impenetrable to these root systems, because below this asphalt, you've got compacted gravel. Below the compacted gravel, you've got compacted subsoils. All those zones are inhospitable to roots, so they're not there. They're simply not there. And so we're limiting, not only when we create impervious areas are we increasing the amount of runoff, but we're also decreasing the amount of area that roots can get to. Here's a normal soil profile in a forest soil. At the top, we have the O horizon, which is organic. When you walk into a forest in the eastern United States, anywhere in Virginia, you shouldn't see grass. You don't normally see grass. Now with Japanese stilt grass, we're starting to see grass. But normally you wouldn't see that. Instead, what you would see is leaf litter. And then a scattered ground cover, like maybe something like Machella repens, which is a partridge berry, or like a podium, or something along those lines. But you're primarily seeing leaf litter and a nice thick layer of leaf litter. Under that, you have the A horizon, which we commonly think of as topsoil. It's very organic, and it's decomposed leaves and other organic matter. It's rich, it's considered to be humus, it's rich in both water and nutrients, and roots love to live in there. They also love to live in the O horizon. Below that, you've got a leach layer where you're looking at nutrients that have leached out. Sometimes this is missing, sometimes it's just shallow, or it can be relatively deep. Below that, you have the B horizon, which is a much more mineral soil. There's not much in the way of organics in it. There's not much in the way of accessible nutrients in it. And so roots tend not to be down in that mineral soil with any great volume. They're there, but they're not very, very common. Then down to the C horizon, now what you're talking about is bedrock material that's crumbled. And by the time you get there, you're pretty much out of the root zone for the trees. Most of the trees are going to be in the A horizon, the E, and maybe a smaller portion of it in the B. Now, what happens when development takes place? Well, the first thing that they do when a developer comes onto a site is he takes away the entire organic layer, completely removes it, and probably sells it, as well as the A horizon, this nice, rich, organic topsoil. He's probably skimming that off, and whoever the contractors are that are moving the soil, they may actually be selling those to farmers so that they actually have decent topsoil. But that's simply gone. So by the time you're getting to the point where they're doing some final grading and they're getting ready to put grass seed down or sod down or plant trees into it, those two layers are completely gone. And what you're left with is maybe the E horizon, but mostly it's the B horizon. So the B horizon is now sitting here at the top. It is easily compacted often, and anytime you're moving heavy equipment over these soils, they are compacting heavily. So all of that is adding to imperviousness. It doesn't make a lawn area completely impervious, but it greatly reduces the amount of water, stormwater, rainwater that can filter down into there. So with a forest, let's go back to our model. This is why forests are so important. In a forest soil, you've got 50% pore space in the soil itself. The A horizon, the E horizon, the B horizon, typically 50% pore space. And that's what enables. So think of this, you're walking into a forest, and underneath your feet, most of that, if it were dry and there wasn't water in those pores, it would just be open air where air is circulating around within these pores. And then when it rains, water filters into those pores and moves through the soil. And so compare that, say, with a suburban lawn, where it's all been run over by bulldozers and it's become very compacted. And I don't know what percentage that might be, but I would suspect it's probably more like 15% pore space, maybe 10% pore space. So the ability of those environments to absorb water is greatly reduced. I want to talk a bit about leaf litter. I think leaf litter is the unsung hero of our forests, and I want to explain to you why. When it comes to cleaning water, the trees are very good at intercepting water above ground. They're very good at their roots making pore space, but there's also a lot of other organisms in the soil that are creating pore space. Everything from, say, the mole in your yard that you wish wasn't there, to earthworms, to the 17-year cicadas that come out periodically, and they spend 17 years crawling around inside the dirt, creating part of what they do is create pore space. You may have beetle larvae, and then you've got a lot of really small creatures that are microscopic bacteria. You've got macroscopic fungi. There are nematodes, some of which are microscopic. You've got millipedes. You've got all these things that are noted over here, earthworms, springtails, thrips, all sorts of things that are living in the soil, and they're living off of organic matter that has died and it's died at the surface of the soil and is gradually worked down by many of these creatures. It's worked down into the soil. So when you have all these kind of creatures down in the soil, they are consuming organic matter, but they're also consuming minerals. They're creating pores. They're allowing the water to infiltrate down into the soil and these organisms are taking up the nutrients that are in those soils. And in those water, the liquid areas where nutrients are floating around in the liquids, the water that's in the pores. And plants are accessing that, but also these creatures are accessing that. So on this lower left-hand area, this is an example of leaf litter. Now, this one is a particularly thick area of leaf litter, but you've got multiple layers of leaves in here that are all surface area. That's significant because when that water falls from the rain, it hits the ground, water has a tendency to stick to things. It's got a good adhesion to it. And it'll adhere to all these layers of leaves. So think of it like a multi-layered cake or a multi-layered sandwich. And all those layers are places where water can adhere to the surfaces. So water can be in a clump of leaf litter like this that's in various stages of decomposition. A lot of water can be right in there before it makes its way down into the lower levels of the soil. So I may have jumped around a little bit, but that's basically the value of trees with their root systems, taking up nutrients, creating pore space, Elizabeth mentioned above surface transpiration and evaporation, and then the leaf litter and all these organisms that are filtering our water before it gets into our streams. And that's the benefit of the forest in a true forested system, not just trees, but forest. So that's the end of my presentation. And Ashley, take it away.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate that. And we'll circle back a little bit about, what we're hearing from, why, Hoadly Square is protecting a lot of the tree cover. And so that should make it all okay. But we'll circle back to that a little bit. And I'll pass it over to Martin. I think many people on this call are pretty familiar with these two projects. But Martin will provide just a little bit of an overview and insight of why it's important to think of Hoadly Square and Maple Valley Grove together, and some interesting things that we heard during the Planning Commission. Something that stuck out to me was that, in some of the questioning, the current county arborist, Will Shoup, was looking at the property, and when asked, why wasn't Maple Valley Grove included in ORPA, he didn't have a good answer, because it's a good quality forest and there's really no reason why it should have been excluded. And so that was something that really caught my attention during the public hearing. But Martin, why don't you take it away and give us that overview?
Okay, thanks, Ashley, and thanks for those great presentations, Julia and Elizabeth. That was really helpful as always. I'm not going to go through this whole presentation. I have presented this before at Midco meetings. If somebody isn't familiar with something that you see here and wants me to expand on it, just let me know. But I'm going to just kind of reinforce some of the things that Julia and Elizabeth just said. The main thing I think we should remember on this, when we all go to speak, well, hopefully we all go to speak on this application next Tuesday. The major issue here, I think the overarching issue, is removing the 40 something, 43, 44 acres from ORPA. And I think that's because it's so important, because of not the fact that this 43 acres is particularly significant, although it is significant. And we've seen why, but I'll show you some more reasons why. But it's a precedent. And we've only had ORPA in place for about 2.5 years. We worked Midco worked, and PWCA and Locapelt all together, and other groups too, worked for over 11 years to get ORPA into the comprehensive plan as an overlay district. Before that, it was in the comp plan as a concept for about 25 years to have protective areas around the drinking water sources in Prince William County. So this is a long time coming, and now we've had it for 2.5 years, and we already have developers coming in to chip away at it. And so this is an important project, but it's also really important from the precedent aspect, because we'll be told during the board meeting by staff that they consider each project individually. And that's true, they do. Unfortunately, developers don't. And developers look at patterns and things the board has allowed to happen in the past. And once you have this project, if it's approved, and they take this land out of ORPA, there will be other developers coming in to remove more land from ORPA. There's no question about that. The way developers make money basically on residential projects is that they maximize the number of units per acre. That's where the profits are. So when the developer can take land that's comp planned for lower density and bring it to higher density and get those entitlements through a rezoning or a comp plan amendment, then that property is worth more. They can pay more to the landowner. They can make more money off their project. So we will see more of these coming. So it's very important. That makes this project that much more important. The other aspect of the CPA is that when CPAs are applied for in Prince William, the vast majority of them are approved. So if we show that we're open for business to start chipping away at the ORPA, there will be more applications and there will be more approvals, because, like I said, if you do the historical search, you'll see that most of the CPAs are approved once they're applied for. So on that basis, let's just move ahead here. And this is the area of Hoadly Square outlined in red. And this is the area where my cursor is now, if you can see that, where Maple Valley Grove is. Maple Valley Grove, as I think Julia said, is forested over this whole area with mature forest. This area is all mature forest. This area is mature forest on Hoadly Square. So we have a lot of mature forest. This mature forest area here on the back of the Dar El Noor project, with Dar El Noor has been approved for expansion. They have not started that work yet, but it's approved to be about twice as big as it is now. The plan is when they enlarge Dar El Noor, this area will be pretty much clear cut to and replace an impervious surface for a parking lot to expand the parking lot. So what we're looking at here is taking all three of these together when we look at environmental impacts, when we look at traffic impacts, when we look at all the impacts. But it's important to think about it's not just these trees, it's not just these trees, it's not just these trees, it's all of this. It's going to be denuded from trees for the most part and replaced with impervious surface. So this is just a slide that shows the ORPA area. This area here was in ORPA, was in SRR originally, as was all the existing ORPA land that's now in ORPA. This area where Maple Valley Grove is project is applied for was taken out of SRR and taken out of ORPA and put into MU3. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And I have another slide that shows this a little bit better, but this is pretty much the watershed dividing line between the Occoquan River watershed that goes this way in the tan and the Potomac River watershed via Neabsco Creek that goes this way. So this is the housing layout for the project, the Hoadly Square project. And as I say, I'll go through this kind of fast. We don't have, we've been through these things before. This is the line that was really hard to get. For some reason, it was really hard for Janelle to show a slide with this line on it during the Planning Commission meeting. But the red line is basically the outline of ORPA superimposed over the Hoadly Square project. So you can see the vast majority of the Hoadly Square project is within the ORPA area. These are just some other slides showing connectivity and so forth. And this is a slide that I thought was important because for our discussion here tonight, because this shows the environmental resource protection overlay. And these fingers you see here are perennial streams, all these fingers here. And you can see you have one leading here off of the property there for Hoadly Square. You have two. This one goes under the parkway. This one goes under the parkway. There's an intermittent stream that feeds into this perennial stream, and they feed off the Maple Valley Grove and drain into these streams. And of course, these streams all come together and form Crooked Creek, which runs between Davis Ford Road and the Parkway and on down and connects to the Occoquan Reservoir just down below the old sewage treatment plant on Davis Ford Road. So again, this is the dividing line for the most part between the watershed for Occoquan and the watershed for the Potomac River. This is another feature on the property that's important to look at. This is the existing pond on the Chriswood Horse Farm at the front of, if you drive down Hoadly, that's the pond you see. And the plan for this project is to fill in that pond, which is a spring-fed pond, which is the headwaters of Neabsco Creek, and put townhouses over top of that. And this is another slide showing this is the pond on the horse farm. This is one of the headwaters for Neabsco Creek. This is another headwaters. This is another headwaters. And these are all coming together, forming the two main legs of Neabsco Creek. And then this is a zoom out that shows you Neabsco Creek, all the separate sections coming together. And then it comes on down, goes under 95, goes under Route 1. Now, an interesting note on Neabsco Creek is that this was a harbor at one time. Before the first European settlers came here, this was a harbor navigable all the way up into here. And this is, of course, our boardwalk now on the wetlands there. And those are wetlands because they were filled in with salt and sediment from tobacco growth in all this watershed area. They actually, at one time, tobacco farmers in early America thought topsoil was bad for tobacco growth, and they actively tried to get rid of it. And so all that topsoil went into these streams. And then later on, starting in the 50s, with a lot of the heavy development that came in when Shirley Highway was brought in and ended just north of Prince William County, all the development started, and that added to the silt and sedimentation. But that filled in this Neabsco Harbor, and it became the wetlands that we see now. And also, Dumfries Harbor, it had a similar fate. At one time, Dumfries Harbor and Dumfries was the second largest port in the U.S., believe it or not, in the 1700s. And then the tobacco farming, the results of that filled in that harbor and made it no longer navigable. They kept moving it out and moving it out, and finally, it just wasn't viable anymore. So those are some of the effects that you can have when you have uncontained silt and sedimentation and uncontained practices. And this is a map that is from the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, and this rates the areas in Virginia, all through Virginia, that are most highest priority for protecting water quality. And the purple is the highest, which my scale would have been number one's the highest, but they have number 5. But this is Prince William County, of course, and you can see where is one of the highest priorities for protecting water quality. Well, it's right in the ORPA area, and the other area is in the watershed on this side of 234. And then you have the areas up in the northwestern part of the county that are also identified to be the most highest priority for protecting water quality. So that just reinforces everything we're trying to do with ORPA. And this is some of Julie Flanagan's best work. This is a staff report on the original Hoadly Square application, which has changed somewhat, but she did a super job on this, identifying. Well, I guess it was more than just you alone, Julie, but this is 3,800% more density, 450% increase in impervious area. I mean, this was just beautiful to read. It really called out the reality of this application. So I won't go through a lot more here. There's a slide here on particular interest to the Brent Forks community, where they propose B3 zoning, which is undescribed as far as what would be there. There's other aspects of this. The vehicle trips per day, 10,000 vehicle trips amongst these 3 expansion of the mosque and these 2 projects are important. It's a port transition between the housing that's next to the Harris Teeter Shopping Center and over to the large lot housing in Brent Forest. It's a port. There's the front of the existing horse farm. These are the townhomes like this, 34 feet tall, that they would build over top. The pond is right in this area, and these townhomes would be built over top of that filled-in spring-fed pond at the front of the property. Just some shots here of the view shed along Hoadly Road, and we don't have an HCOD, Highway Corridor Overlay District, but most of the developers have respected the semi-rural feel of Hoadly Road and kept the view shed pretty much the same. This project would be quite different and have a jarring effect as far as having the 34-foot townhomes at the front of the property. So I wanted to just show a little bit on Maple Valley Grove while we're here. And this is a very short slide presentation, but this is just an outline of the project itself. We've already talked about this parcel, that it's heavily wooded with mature forest, and the streams that, as we see here, the streams that are running under the parkway from that property, why it's so important to protect this. As I said before, we don't really understand why this wasn't included in ORPA along with all the other SRR areas that were existing in the previous comp plan. But it wasn't, and it should have been. This is just the layout of the project with the 2 over 2 townhomes over all the A area. and then a 32-unit apartment building in the B. This is just showing that the green is the tree cover. And as you can see, this is something Julia showed, and this is just another way of looking at it. That the green, you can see how this changes on this side of Hoadly, and it's much different with all the building lots in the tan. And the green shows all the tree cover and all these developments, even the ones with like Brent Forest, who have a lot of homes, that you still see a lot of tree cover. And of course, the lighter green is the environmental features, the perennial streams and so forth. This is just another shot with a better shot of the perennial streams. We've seen this a couple of times already. Traffic impacts and the fact that it takes the bus about 45 minutes to get to Potomac Mills. So that's all I have. And I just want to reinforce the idea that, when we're looking at this, I think the overarching issue is the CPA for the comp plan to remove this acreage from ORPA and the precedent that would set. I think that is the most important issue here. There, as you see, went through this pretty fast, but as I said, we've talked about this before. There are a lot of other issues and a lot of other problems with this, but that precedent issue, I think, is really key for the health of the reservoir and the people on the wells in Mid-County. So that's all I have, Ashley. Thank you all a lot.
Should see your slides.
Thank you so much, Martin. Doreen, I see your hand raised. Why don't you unmute and come on in?
Yes, thank you. I want to know if you or your members, and I think you said Julia could, what homeowners with wells can do to protect their water, and how the community can, help. We're talking about the reservoir water, but also for the wells. And what does this building projects affect our wells and the ability to have water to our wells?
Thanks, Doreen. Elizabeth, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Well, as you know, you need a recharge area. When you build on the open area, you reduce the recharge. Since the groundwater is sitting in the soils above the bedrock, it's very fragile. When you start building in these areas, as Julie points out, you mow that all away and haul it off in those trucks, one after another, and it's gone. And there's nothing to hold the groundwater, so it will vanish. And what you can do to protect your well, other than maintaining the woodland and open land adjacent to it, nothing. This is, they have the power over your drinking water supply.
Sounds like a really good opportunity to become a very strong advocate.
Right. And what can the homeowners do to protect their water? Fertilizers on your lawn, things like that. Just to help homeowners understand how to protect their drinking water of their well.
Well, you should test it. I don't fertilize my lawn because I drink, from a relatively shallow well. By that I mean about 100 feet, but it starts drawing water at about 50 foot. And treat your land properly, and also your neighbors, maintaining your septic system, testing your well regularly, not applying pesticides and herbicides to your lawn. You don't really need it. Sea kelp works just fine. Thank you very much. To treat it like it is a precious resource.
I was just doing as information for everyone. I don't fertilize either, but people need to get that out there.
Thank you, Doreen. I saw a comment. I think it was about the monitoring our tree cover loss. And now I can't find it. I think it was David that said that. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
David,
I don't really
have a lot to add other than it's very frustrating that we only have these very periodic estimates coming in with any sort of quantitative basis on tree cover. And in between those reports, no one's really seems to be watching this. And the Washington Council of Governments, I think their goal was like 50% tree cover. And Prince William is a part of that and agreed to it. But, you know, our, if you look at the tree cover by magisterial district, I think, you know, our tree cover is concentrated in a few areas. And I think, you know, we're just losing so much in between these measures, and no one's really watching the farm.
Prince William County has lost 2,000 acres of trees in the last 7 years, ending to 2023. The Chesapeake Bay Tree Network does track these things. But Prince William County, because of Prince William Forest Park, we are still about 55% tree cover, even with that loss. But Loudon's not. Loudon's down to 45. And, you know, we're talking about mowing more and more down. So there's been tremendous loss. 2,000 acres of tree loss in 7 years is an awful lot.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair at all to count Prince William Forest Park or Manassas Battlefield on tree cover because Prince William County has no say over those areas whatsoever. So even if they wanted to take all the trees down, they couldn't touch it. So we should leave those areas out when we do a tree inventory.
Great. Julie, do
Well,
you have anything to add to that?
I kind of shared David's concerns and frustrations. The county has not done a program where we are figuring out how to regularly assess tree cover and on our own. But as Elizabeth mentioned, there are agencies like COG and Chesapeake Bay that are working to, in a more regional and perspective, to track tree cover to some degree. So I think um, we have seen the last number I heard was about 53%. I didn't think that included Prince William Forest Park or Manassas Battlefield, but it certainly, I would agree with Elizabeth's comment about the number of acres being cleared. I can tell you the county does track the number of land disturbance. Let me put that differently. They track land disturbance permits, which has included in it the amount of land that will be cleared. And it's supposed to, they could use that. That would be a tool and what would happen is that if every time that a developer submits a site plan, which is where they show details of what they're going to clear and whether or not it's forested, every time that they could submit one of those plans, by the time that plan gets approved, it could have on it the forest acreage that is proposed to be cleared. And then you would presume that they went through and actually did the project. And so that would be one means of specific to Prince William County recording on a very, I think, a very accurate basis what is being cleared. And it's a calculation that would not be difficult for a civil engineer to include on a site plan as a matter of routine. So I think that's an avenue to pursue.
Thanks, Julie. Harry, you want to come on in?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate some of the things that Elizabeth said. Uh, VDOT in the last in years 23, 24, 24, 25 have dumped 600 million pounds of salt in the watershed. 600 million pounds. And that either goes into private wells or it goes into the Occoquan Reservoir. And 15 years ago, the reservoir was had about 8 parts, 9 parts per liter, and now it's 35 every day of the year. And if you're on a restricted salt diet, you should not be drinking tap water coming out if you're serviced by the Prince William Water. And the other big source of salt, of course, is Micron. That's all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. And quite a bit is coming from the wastewater as well, from our because of our what we're flushing down the toilets. Julia, why don't you come in and ask your questions?
Okay, great. Thank you. So I do have a question on when I was planning on talking to a person who represents us or my area on the board. But then I think the issue was, or I had a question on, in the comprehensive plan, it sounded like the area currently at Hoadly Square was designated as agricultural, but now it's just turning over to residential. And it would still be like they were worried that there was going to be a lot of tree loss. And I was curious to know, like, it sounded like the person who represents us in my area is um for the plan because he feels like there's actually going to be less tree loss by having the Hoadly Square project, and there would be more tree loss if it was allowed to just be zoned, I guess, residential. Is that correct?
Can I take that one, Ashley?
Yeah, I was going to
You-
suggest, Martin, you take it away.
Yeah, Courtney, thanks for the question. This is something that it's I would consider it gaslighting because what is being um, what they're trying to say here is that if somebody were to if we were to develop that land on Hoadly Square with 5 acre lots, as the comp plan calls for most of that land, for the ORPA land under 5 acre lots, there's nothing stopping the landowner from clearing all the trees. And that's true. There's nothing stopping the landowner. There's not stopping in this county. There's not nothing stopping any landowner from clearing his entire property. The problem is with that scenario is that nobody does it. And in Prince William County, in Mid County, Midco has worked with more than a few developers on various projects. And when you have, say, even when you have 3 acre lot size average on a project, you can cluster the homes on part of that property and leave the rest of it as protected space with a conservation easement on it. So that whole area is all kept together. The trees aren't touched, and you have a permanent entity that protects those trees on that parcel. So the Purcell Road project's one example of that. There's a few more that we've achieved that on. And the reality is virtually nobody ever buys a nice tree property in Mid County and then takes down all the trees. So that's a scenario that they're trying to put forward when they say that. But we've also actually even gotten proffers on individual development projects that prevent landowners from taking down healthy trees on their own property, and that's part of the contract someone signs when they buy the property in that HOA. So that's even above and beyond having the conservation easements on open space within the project. So we've actually had a lot of success in that, and it's just that this kind of a red herring argument that you'll lose more trees if you develop it under 5 acre lots.
Okay, that's great. Thank
May I
you.
chime in on that?
Sure,
Absolutely.
please do.
So, agree with what you're saying there, Martin, but I'd also point out that currently, Julia, what you're saying is you're correct, and you're saying it's currently zone A1. So with the current zoning, they can't put 5 acre lots on there. So they would have to rezone to put 5 acre lots on there. And that would give the county the opportunity to comment on it and say, hey, you're in the ORPA. Let's make sure that you're developing those 5 acre lots with the kind of restrictions that Martin was talking about. And they could even say, the county could say, we want you to develop those in such a way that rather than it would be like one of those gerrymandered property line things, but to say we want you to put the homes up toward the front where you've got the open pasture land, the open farmland, and have the back of the wooded areas conserved. So I think you could put 5-acre lots on there in such a manner that you would preserve more of the forest. And I think you could easily do that where you're preserving more of the forest than is being done with Hoadly Square.
Okay, great. That helps a lot. And then I was also curious, does the county or the developer need to do any type of NEPA document, like on the federal level? Before you do some type of action, you should do NEPA. And even I've worked on a DC project where the zoning was had to have NEPA done beforehand. Do they have anything like that here?
Well, the
NEPA
county,
is specific to federal land. Go ahead, Julie.
I was going to say that NEPA doesn't apply to the county. But what they do have is and it's not nearly as detailed or in depth as what a NEPA document is, but we do require that developers provide what's called an ECA, an environmental constraints analysis, that does outline very specifically things like wetlands, forest cover types, streams, intermittent streams, anything that steep slopes with highly erodible soils, soil types, that kind of thing. And so that document is ostensibly to be used by the developers to lay out their developments. I can only say that I've maybe seen one or two developers actually take that document seriously and use it as a tool for laying out their developments. It's pretty rare when they actually follow or pay attention to the ECA with their layouts.
Okay, but the county's not like bound to look at it before they make any decision on zoning. They don't really follow the ECA either. Is that true?
For county land,
Yeah,
they are not technically bound to it, but we
okay.
certainly have been working to make sure that it is done, and it is got more attention paid to it than it has been, say, 10, 15 years ago. As an example, the fire station that was built on Davis Ford Road and the police station there, they did pay attention to the ECA, and staff was able to get input that did have some influence over how that was developed.
Okay. All right. No, thank you. I have one more question, but I don't want to, I saw like a bunch of hands go up, so I just want to say if you have time for me, I still have one more.
We will circle back. Kevin, do
Yes,
you want to come
thanks.
in?
Yeah, I wanted to ask when Elizabeth and you say this is the most urbanized watershed, my mind is immediately skeptical. I don't know of other watersheds. I'm like, is that really true? Is there a list of watersheds that I can look at? This type of statements that says, okay, well, this is the most urbanized. It's just, I assume that you have good sources for that, but the statement makes me feel skeptical.
It's very simple. Philadelphia once was a watershed. It's non-functional. Washington, D.C. was once a watershed. It's non-functional. They have tipped over the edge. They are no longer functioning watersheds. They're just stormwater management systems, and they're trying to deal with floodwaters so that you have like Arlington, it's not a functional watershed. So indeed, and you can look at the documentation that the Occoquan laboratory has, a monitoring laboratory. It is the most urbanized watershed that survived to be a water supply.
Okay.
We are drinking the watershed. So there isn't, think of any more slightly more urbanized area, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Atlanta. They just aren't functioning watersheds anymore. Nobody's drinking the water off the streets of Washington, D.C.
Okay. It's a different type of definition of watershed that I think of in my mind usually was like everything that goes somewhere is a watershed. How can something not be a watershed? It's just
It's a
like a different
stormwater
definition.
management system. What happens is it becomes a stormwater management system.
Okay.
So it's not a watershed anymore.
Thank you.
Sure.
And that was reflected in a opinion piece that I just wrote and published in Prince William Times, and essentially saying, we are actively testing in Prince William County how much can we develop before we break the watershed. And in that piece, I caution that that's the wrong question we should be asking and testing. And it's because we'll know it when it's too late. And so it's important that, we should be proud stewards of the reservoir. This should be this should be a big source of pride in our identity and the role that we play in the region. And the question we should be asking is not how much can we develop, but how do we protect the resources that we have, and how do we protect our groundwater and our reservoir. So I put that link in the chat for anyone to look at. So and thank you, Jill, for publishing it. So Doreen, we'll go to you, and then we'll go back to Julia for her question.
When someone spoke about the VDOT and the salt they spread on the road, in the last many years, they've been using a liquid spread. Is that better for our environment than the old way, where they would just actually put down what looked like salt crystals? Is that
More,
worse for the water?
That is salt. I mean, it is salt what they're putting
Right.
down. It's the
it's
same
more
Right, I know, but
controlled though. It's putting down less. They're actually able
okay.
to use less. But it is a salt solution. It's a brine solution.
Yeah. I just want to know, I understand that. I want to know if it was better for the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. So is it substantially better? I mean, has it reduced the salt going to the water?
Unclear.
Well, let me say this, Elizabeth. Irrespective of what they put down, if I FOIA'd their data, and in 2 years, again, it's 23, 24, 24, 25. They admit it through a FOIA of 600 million pounds they've used 600 million pounds of salt in the watershed.
The problem is they have more roads than they used to. So their wonderful plan of using less salt per, square foot is not producing less salt in the watershed.
It's also not just VDOT, it's also private contractors and just people independently putting salt. I mean, I've before a storm, I've walked around in my neighborhood and I've seen HOAs in preparation just pile a mound of salt before distributing it. And sometimes they put it right by a storm drain. Now, I live outside. I live on the eastern end, so I don't live in the in the reservoir watershed, but it's still concerning, and that does wash away to I don't know which.
Actually, let me mention one thing. Lake Ridge Parks and Recreation Association, which is the largest HOA in the county, doesn't use salt. They only use sand on their private roads.
Ashley, if I could chime in on that question also, just what you were mentioning about seeing salt piled near storm drains or any place that it's not protected. I believe that's actually illegal. And if you contact the watershed management branch, if you see a scenario like that where they can go into, we have what's called an illicit discharge inspector who can go out and see to make sure whether or not that's being done legally.
I did. They went out. and it stayed there for a week, and it rained.
Thank you.
It did.
They weren't able to get quick action.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Doreen, go ahead. Or I'm sorry, Julia. We're going back to you, Julia.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So I remember in the meeting that we had before with the developer, they had mentioned at the public hearing, they had said that in response to some people saying they're worried about their wells, they had offered, well, we will work with the people who are right on the street adjacent to the new development proposed, that they would only work with the people who are like right there, that one street. But when you were talking, it almost sounded like even just 5 to 10% of the watershed, I think it was Elizabeth who said, if that was disturbed, the whole watershed could then fail. Is that correct? So it wouldn't really be just affecting the people neighboring the development, it's actually affecting the whole watershed. Is that a better
Yeah, so
way
we're
to
wanting
characterize it?
we might need to tease out a little bit on impervious surface and impacts to surface water, and then impervious surface and impacts to groundwater. So Elizabeth, go ahead.
We have no monitoring of the watershed. That formerly perennial stream I showed you that was drying out, that the groundwater had separated from the stream bed and was no longer feeding it. The problem is there's nothing near it. It's not within 500 feet of the road. It's a whole series of building around the general area. And the end result is this creek, this perennial stream, is become ephemeral. So, and that's because the groundwater level has fallen far enough so the stream bed could no longer reach it. So, the first thing you're going to see is private wells in the area, in the broader area, are going to start seeing the water level begin to fall over a number of years. So as if you actually had a monitoring well, you would see a descending curve. And where's the point at which the wells fail? It will be, the drought that hits, and suddenly it can't function anymore. It can't limp anymore. So yeah, it will over time, but we're not talking 5 years. We're talking longer term. It is a slow decline. So they'll work with people, except that they're going to leave town. And they're gone, and those buildings will be there, and slowly but surely the wells will fail.
Right. And the development that they're planning to put there, that's all going to be on city water?
Yes.
No doubt.
Okay. Yeah.
I also think that it's important to because we hear this a lot, that this is a 0.00 whatever percent of the watershed, but we have to remember the cumulative impacts of the development that happens over time, and that idea of death by 10,000 cuts. And so and what Martin was pointing out of the amount that is being removed is actually kind of irrelevant to the discussion. What's really important is, will the county uphold its policies that they have instituted to protect the watershed, or won't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Just Ashley, just one more thing on this. First of all, Elizabeth, I think we've talked before, and aren't the fairly shallow wells like we see in a lot of areas in Mid-County, like my well, aren't they more susceptible to impervious surfaces near them
Yes.
than the deeper wells?
Oh, yeah.
Water might come from further away.
In mid-county, you're dealing with an overburden aquifer in your area. So your shallow well would be an indication that maybe your overburden isn't thick enough. So it's the limit of what the overburden can hold. It will dry out, and it will dry out, fairly easily. It is an easily destroyed aquifer.
So, and the other point I wanted to make was that Julia, Julie Novotny, not
Yeah.
Julie Flanagan, you mentioned the developer giving some kind of a proffer to check people's wells. We had the same situation with the Klein project on the other end of Mid County over by Manassas. These things are almost completely useless. These protections or so-called protections they proffer, because they check your well pre-development and they check your well at some point post-development. But the problem is they check your well fairly soon after they've put all the impervious surfaces in place and done the development. So sometimes these water patterns might take
A
a year or
decade.
two to a decade to establish themselves, and a developer will have they will have checked your wells and been long gone by that point. And the other thing is, as Elizabeth will tell you, and I've heard this from her many times, it all depends on the season, and it depends on the overall conditions that year, drought and so forth. Say they check your well in the middle of the winter after it's been snowing for part of the winter, okay, and or other way around. They check your well in a drought situation and you have a certain level, then they check your well again after construction and say it's the middle of winter after snowpack has been on the ground. Okay, well, the level's gone up in your well, but does that reflect the actual conditions that are overall existent in that area for the future? And it's really almost impossible. And that the lawyers for the developer are going to game the system to make sure they never pay for anybody's well anywhere, anytime. So what I'm trying to say is these protections are pretty much useless that they proffer.
Yeah. And then is there anything we can do during the meeting to, because I know it seems like once they ask questions, the public isn't able to go back and say, hey, that's not true when the developer answers the question and it's false or not very helpful.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
frustrating moment to sit in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, during these meetings, the developers representative gets to rebut everything the citizens say. We don't get a chance to rebut what the developer says. We can pre-butt what the developer is going to say, which is what I'm going to do and some other folks are going to do at the meeting on Tuesday, because we've already heard what they say in planning commission. So
Right.
some of the things they're going to say, for example, that adding 4,000 more vehicle trips to the area is going to help traffic flow. We can rebut that, and we can rebut that this 5 acre thing where development under the 5 acres would actually be worse uh, for the watershed than putting all these impervious surfaces into place and all these townhouses. We can pre-butt those things, but we don't get a chance to really come in and hit them after they've said some of these things.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that was the frustrating part. So, but yeah, I was hoping to, say add some of those things too if I have time. Or I mean, I'll be there, but I won't know about it's a very short time that I have to speak, which is only 3 minutes, so.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Julia. So
All
we'll
right,
go
thank
to
you.
Michael Server, and then we'll talk a little bit about the stormwater proposal, or what is being proposed for managing the stormwater and actually claiming that it's improving the watershed. So go ahead, Michael.
Sure. Julia, this is really actually to add on to what you brought up with the proffer. So I live on Lost Creek. They mentioned in the meeting that they were going to proffer 500 foot from their development. I'm actually even on the same side, but near the mosque. And I wouldn't qualify for it. So you're talking about like 7 homes. So like to Martin's point before, it is even weasel words in what they're willing to put out there and offer in a public meeting without it being in writing. So yeah, it's practically useless. The well checking and so forth, and that was really all I wanted to add, to kind of double down on what Martin had said there.
Great, thank you. Julie, I don't know if you can talk about this, but they're proposing, or Martin, maybe you can, Jill's question about the jellyfish stormwater filtering system.
No, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Julie, do you have any ideas?
It's not my purview, but I did want to mention that the problem is impervious area and the use of the salts with regard to the salting of the Occoquan Reservoir. I'd have to ask somebody in our stormwater management, or you could ask somebody in our stormwater management group, whether or not the ponds that are used and the jellyfish is just kind of a underground system, whether or not that actually does remove salts. It may not, but I don't know. It's just not my expertise.
I think because I did go back to hear that part, and I think the other part of it is it's supposed to allow infiltration.
Yeah, not that I know of. There's I could be wrong about this because again, it's not my area of expertise, but the thought is that the bottom of these underground systems is dirt, and it's the local dirt, and supposedly it allows infiltration. But I think that's, again, the mere way that they are going to construct it is going to compact soil and not facilitate infiltration. And if I remember correctly, I've heard our own stormwater people say that these are not really infiltration systems.
They aren't infiltration systems, they're filtration systems. They don't remove salt, they remove nutrients and sediments. The salt molecule is too small.
I think this probably falls into the category of we're going to help your traffic by adding 4,000 vehicle trips per day. I mean, we're going to make the system better by adding 90% more impervious surface to the land. It defies human logic. And this, that's why we always have to think about these things logically a little bit and think, does that really make sense? That these kind of things just don't make sense. I've talked to some folks about this before that do this for a living, and with statistics and enough information, you could pretty much make a report read however anybody wants it to read as far as achieving the preconceived goals. So, but I'm not an expert on this, so I agree with Elizabeth and Julia. I don't see how it could work, but
Go ahead, Harry.
Yes, thanks, Ashley. Regarding the traffic, we did a study last year in terms of afternoon drive time traffic from the express lanes on 123 to Hoadly Road was 42 minutes to go, well, roughly 8 miles. The other thing about the traffic, if you're familiar with Lake Ridge, Cotton Mill Road is now become a cut through. So Cotton Mill, people get off on coming down Old Bridge, get off on Smoketown, go to Griffith, and then get on Cotton Mill. Cotton Mill in the morning is just like Old Bridge Road because people are cutting through the neighborhoods to get down to either Oakwood or Antietam, and then go back out onto Old Bridge Road. Uh, I go down. I take my grandkids to school in the morning, and Cotton Mill is as crowded as Old Bridge Road, and that's just a cut through from traffic coming from the western part of the Hoadly area and Old Bridge because it's so crowded. People are getting smart or dumb to use the cut through the neighborhoods. And I'm stunned that Bodie doesn't recognize that.
Jill, do you want to come in? And I see that you wrote quite a bit, and I'm imagining you're wanting a response.
Oh, I mean, I'm just sharing. That's what he told us of why he, yes, Martin, you can rebut it for the article. That's why I'm here, to hear your rebuts. Because I want to put something out before Tuesday, probably Monday or Sunday. We'll do like a preview. But I just wanted to share that. That's what he told us as to why he's supporting the project. And I know we've talked about a lot of the things that he said, talking about like how we talked about, are there more protections under, the 1 home to 5 acres or this scenario. Julie brought up a really good point that it's not currently zoned for 1 house per 5 acres. So I will include that in the article. Thank you so much, Julie, for mentioning that, because that is true. And just because that's a recommendation doesn't mean that that's what can happen there yet, right? So, in that rezoning, they could ask for more protections for tree save, if they were to go that route. So that's been super helpful. And just hearing about the benefits of the forested land with regard to filtering the water and preserving the watershed and preserving the water quality is also something I think most people don't understand. So using Julie's comments, I will attempt to also mention that in the article. But I just wanted to share that with you all. So, because I will be publishing it on Sunday. I don't know if it's public information, so you might as well have it now.
Yeah, Jill, that was the whole thing we went into with the 5 acre lot issue.
Right.
As far as that's the specious argument that you can save more trees by paving a whole part of the ORPA and preserve the environment better than you can by building on 5 acre average lot size. And then you have to remember average lot size and setting the land aside, conservation easements. This is not pie in the sky. We've already done this on 3 or 4 projects. So it's it's a completely specious argument.
Okay. Thank you.
If you want to give me a call, we can talk more about it. I can, you can get, I can give you more information about that. But we've heard this argument from the beginning of this project, and it's another one of these things where it doesn't pass the smell test.
Okay.
Agreed.
Elizabeth or Julie, do you want to add to that at all?
Actually, I have a question that maybe, or a comment that, and maybe Elizabeth can add on to this, but I started reading about New York City and what they are doing to protect their water supply. And I don't know the numbers, so I can't quote you, but they've got tens of thousands of acres of forest land preserved in upstate New York because they're taking their water supply from those watersheds.
It's the Occoquan Reservoir.
You go for it. Tell us more about it.
New York City long ago lost its watershed, so it pipes its water from the Occoquan Reservoir, which is like right by Wappingers Falls. It's like an hour and a half's drive up New York, and they pipe it all the way down to New York City. And it's actually very clean water. New York City has never had a water treatment plant that does anything more than just, run it through some sand filters. But they too are dancing on the edge of having to treat their water. But New York City for a very long time has been piping the water from upstate New York into New York City because that's where their watershed is. It's about 100 miles away.
And also that watershed has land restrictions on it, right?
It's
very strict.
It's all forest park. It's it's undeveloped. It's they have some camping cabins. My family had a 99-year lease on one of them, which actually has run off. But it's really beautiful. It's pristine land. It's hiking. It's gorgeous land up there. And it's, state park, but it's all owned by New York City. and it has restrictions even on what you can do at the campsites and, you know, in terms of what you can use the parkland for. It is highly protected, and that's how they did it.
And we're talking a water supply for multiple millions of people and the foresight to do that.
Well, yeah. And that was the original idea of the Occoquan. Keep the population down to 100,000, protect the land, and we just kept building.
Yeah, it's actually when I lived in Ecuador, when I lived in Cuenca, that it was very similar. We got the water for Cuenca came from Cajas National Park. So they established a national park, and that was the drinking water. And that was one of the only cities in Ecuador where, you know, me as a gringo with a sensitive gringa stomach, I could actually drink the water without any issues. So it's a different way to it's a little different when you live in the same in the same watershed. Michael, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure. I just want to let Jill know that I put something in the chat. Kenny Bodie has touted the Chesapeake Bay in a number of places in his bio, as well as also made several notable appearances with Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and is pretty thoroughly behind this project from what many of us have witnessed from meeting with him a number of times. So just wanted to add that context for you for your research and article. That's all.
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments? Go ahead and unmute and come in.
Well, that chicken came out.
Hold on.
All right. Go ahead, Gary.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just have a couple of comments. I was fighting the oxymoron, the preserve at Longwood, which was a major encroachment on the watershed. And they went in and clear cut every square inch they could that wasn't on a hill to build homes. And it was really a shame. And it was the very first incidents where they had gotten into the Royal Crescent. And everybody at the time said, no, this is just a one-off. It's never going to happen. And within a year, the Royal Crescent doesn't even exist anymore. So it's the nose under the elephants or under the tent. And I'm afraid, you know, if we give in on these 40 acres or whatever it is, other builders are going to go and say, well, you gave them that, and if you don't give it to us, we're going to sue you because you guys gave it to them, but now you won't give it to me. And the supervisors are terrified of lawsuits. So
if it's from the developers, they don't seem to mind if it comes from the residents.
right.
Yeah.
So, and then adding 1,000 or more vehicles to an area that was right now watershed, and all the runoff from the vehicles and the gas and the tires and the brakes is just insane as well. I just don't see where any of this makes sense at all. And we need to be more proactive in preserving what we do have. And the more water we have that is protected is going to dilute the salt that we do have. So the less water we have, the more salty the water is going to get, regardless of whether we add more salt to the land. That's all.
Thanks, Gary. And it's a really good reminder about the quote unquote preserve at Long Branch. And that was, yeah. And Elizabeth, did you want to comment any more about the Royal Crescent?
You know, the Royal Crescent was always about water. It was to protect the watershed. If you look at where it was the headwaters of the Occoquan, The whole Occoquan watershed bull run, it is the source of our drinking water for the Occoquan. And, to eliminate it, to cut it down, to build more is just a guarantee that we will kill this watershed.
Thank you. Okay, I see that Lana asked, I'm just going to kind of do these rapid fire since we're kind of winding down a little bit here. So is there any legislation on watershed loss? This is from Lana. Not to my knowledge. Yeah, okay. And then talking points for contacting legislators, that's from Janice. I'm not sure which legislators you're referring to. Are you talking about the Board of Supervisors? You're talking about state representatives?
If we talk about enforcing the Occoquan plan to preserve the Occoquan, in terms of legislation, there might be ways to pull some of the ability to approve every single rezoning in Prince William County and turn it into higher density by preserving what are the sensitive waters for the Occoquan. It is a resource for all of Northern Virginia. It doesn't just belong to Prince William County. Our plans to build, to develop, need to be looked at of the whole picture of the water supply for Northern Virginia. And we need to preserve that. The ICPRB just came out with their report saying, oops, we're a little short on water for the watershed. Even with the new reservoirs, even with the Loudon reservoirs, there's, 5-7% chance that we're going to run out of water, somewhere around, the next 25 years, that we're going to be short in a drought. So, that's a real issue. And if the Occoquan has no sources of water anymore, if we destroy this watershed, what the heck do we have?
Yep, that is our backup. And then James asks, what can someone do in addition to showing up to support at the meeting? Well, you can certainly sign up and speak. That would be great. Share information with a neighbor or a friend and see if they would be willing to share their views as well. And I don't know if Martin or anybody else has anything to add to that.
No, that's great, Ashley. I just kind of reiterate, talk to your friends, your neighbors, the folks that live around you and in the county. Make sure they're aware of these things because, as much as we at Midco and PWCA and other groups, we try to do a lot of outreach. Um, we reach a very small sliver of the county population. So anything you can do to megaphone that out and get more people knowledgeable about what's going on in the county, this watershed area and everything else that's going on in the county. We don't have the bandwidth or the email list to get to everybody. So, social media, however can actually get the word out, that would be great.
Yeah, and I think it's important. We're hearing a lot that there's the most important thing right now is to meet our housing needs and our housing crisis, and it's the framing of these developments pits our housing needs against our environmental responsibilities, and that's unnecessary to do so. I mean, when I was listening to the public hearing at the Planning Commission, and you hear people's stories, I mean, it tugs at the heartstrings. I mean, I mean, I'm a human being. Like when you hear these stories, like it does, you want people to like have housing and live good lives. But location matters. And that those arguments could be used in the same, like, you know, if the federal government decided to get rid of Prince William Forest Park, would we want this development in the middle of Prince William Forest Park? You know, there is an opportunity to provide housing for residents and protect the watershed. And that framing of pitting it against each other, I think is inappropriate.
It's not as much a housing crisis as it is a housing affordability crisis, though we are indeed short the units that were forecast by MCOG that we would need. We have fallen very much short of what people can afford and affordable housing units. And this isn't it, you know?
Well, and this is you know, the affordable housing issue is a nationwide issue. This is not something that Prince William County is dealing with in a vacuum. I mean, housing prices now, compared to the average wage, are twice as much as they were in 1970. So, in other words, adjusted for inflation, given what people make today, it's twice as expensive to buy a house or a car, for that matter. They're both twice as expensive, and this is across the country. Now, of course, there are variances on that in different areas. There's some areas that are the industry's gone away and they're cheaper areas to live. But generally speaking, it's an affordability crisis across the country. But we do have built into our comprehensive plan a lot of areas to build housing that makes a lot more sense near, especially high density housing near high capacity transit. Ashley's done a great job. PWCA's done a great job with their 3Rs plan to try to identify these places. Potomac Mills is a great place for future growth. The I-95 corridor, the I-66 corridor. There's just, you know, we have to do this in a way that hopefully reduces congestion, gets people out of their cars, changes the paradigm from the 1950s of everybody driving their car to work every day and having to build more lane miles every year and never keeping up with traffic. I mean, these are all connected things, and we have to look at this holistically, and we can protect our environment. We can get people out of their cars. We can live sustainably and prepare for the future. But it's not happening without people getting involved because the government's not doing it on their own. We're going to have to help them to do this.
You know, according to the data, as of October 2025, the median sale price of a home in Prince William County was $565,000. Over 50% of the county's renters, not home buyers, are cost burdened, more than 30% of their income on housing. There's a significant shortage of affordable units. It's 8,800 according to Midco, and it's a potential shortage of 14,000 to 23,000 housing units total if the trends from 2019 continue. You know, so the county has now got the affordable dwelling unit, the Housing Trust Fund, and the comprehensive plan updates, which were all supposed to plan for the use of the county and put more housing where it should be. And then wait 5 minutes and let's rezone everything for higher density. So they're putting houses in the middle of nowhere that aren't going to be affordable to the people who need houses. And it doesn't make sense. You know, and they come up with a plan, but the plan is not for a sustainable Prince William.
Yeah, so that's my follow on for Maple Grove. That wasn't supposed to be part of the comprehensive plan to have that because that's currently still zoned agricultural as well, right?
It's zoned agricultural, Julia, but it's comp planned for MU3, which is mixed use with a transect of 3. And the transect of 3 means 4 to 12 units per acre and up to 5 stories in building height. So the comprehensive plan was changed in 2022 to radically change the designation on that and the intensity and density on that particular triangular piece of land from what it was under SRR, which is 1 home per 2.5 acres, to 4 to 12 units per acre. So it was radically up planned, and now they're trying to rezone it to meet that comp plan designation. So what Midco doesn't agree with was the fact that it was changed in the comp plan because of the environmental, the environmental aspect of that property. It should never been changed, but it is MU3 in the comp plan, and they are wishing to rezone it to comport to the comp plan. So they're doing what the comp plan says, basically.
Okay, so that one is a harder argument overall. I mean, we just don't really have even something to point to in the comprehensive plan, but clearly at least Hoadly Square is not matching that, but unfortunately Maple Grove, it's also in the comp plan. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. But it's just something that I guess is still worthwhile to bring up, that it's also tree, like well forested, and it's also at the moment helping the aquifer.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Well, we're at 9 o'clock, so I would invite any of our guests to have kind of last minute words as we wrap up the night. And this is recorded, and we'll get this presentation to you. But Elizabeth or Julie, do you have any final thoughts to leave us with?
Go trees.
Go trees.
I'll stick with Julie on that one. Water, good.
Yeah. Martin?
Yeah, I'll make it a threesome. Water good, trees good. Impervious bad.
Impervious bad. At least in this area, there are areas where it's better to develop, certainly, and create those walkable communities that that we do want to see, in especially near existing transit hubs. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to spend an evening with all of you.
Hi, this is Sarah. Can I jump in one quick second?
Sure.
I just want to express my frustration. Certainly I'm not an eco warrior like you guys are, but I try to get the word out. I don't even live in Prince William County, but you're so close to us. You've heard this before. But I invite people constantly, it's sort of becoming a pest, to the Midco things, try to let them know what's going on. And a lot of people just, whatever. So I'll keep fighting. I'll keep talking about it. I'll keep on being a pest, but thank heavens for you guys. Great presentation. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think we're in good company, and it's always inspiring to see so many people come out and speak and spend the long evenings at public hearings with us. Because I do believe that we make a difference together. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for putting this on.
Thank you,
Happy
Martin.
holidays to everybody.
Thank you. This is so
Holidays,
helpful.
and thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
I'll be ending, and see everyone on Tuesday.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.